whenever I do any join, if I can quickly proxy. Okay, so this was our derived data set. And then if I click on edit on this derived data set, so if you see the default join type is always left outer join. If for whatever reasons you want to select a different join type, you can do that, right? But by default, the join type is the left outer join. Okay, so now this is fine. So if I go back to my supervisory organization based data set, you'll see that here earlier, if I joined the sector in my primary pipeline, which is the sector in companies, with the sector in the supervisory organization dataset, my base dataset 02. But if I go back and look at this dataset once again, you'll see there are two sector type fields. One is here, sector. If I can just expand it a bit. And then I also have sector fields once again. Now, what is happening is these are basically these subtypes of an organization. So in Workday, when you create any organization, you define a subtype for that organization. So for example, your supervisory org, which is the organization we are looking at right now, it can be classified, for example, as a business unit, a division, a department, a group, a project, a hub, basically to represent your organization structure, your enterprise structure, right? So enterprises are divided into these business units, various divisions, various departments, and that is what is identified as a subtype. For all of these organizations, if you see the primary mapping that I'm looking for is these 4 or 5: mobility, energy, company, life sciences. So these are the different sectors or business units I have my organization operating. But under these, I have a number of other organizations which are either divisions or groups or departments and so on and so forth. So for example, if I scroll a bit to the right, asset and wealth management, this actually is a department under my energy sector. Now, when I've created this derived data set, right, I have only been able to identify my top level organizations and not those departments and divisions and so on and so forth. That's why if you see, my derived data set only has 9 rows of data. However, if I look at my actual supervisory structure, there are many more records, right? So what I need to do is also do a join to see all of those organizations wherein this actually maps as well, right? So for that, I'll create a new derived data set. I'll click on create derived dataset. Very similar to how we created this dataset, with the only exception that it would be mapped on. So I'm again creating a derived dataset using company details as my primary pipeline, similar to what I did here. BDS01 company details. Click on select. The name I want to give is DDS number 02. I want to assign it to the tag Jan 5th and save. All right, so my data set is ready and it has all the company details. Now, similar to how I created my first data set, derived data set, here as well I am doing a join, but this time I'll not do a join between sector and sector. I would do a join between sector and this field. So I want to add a new stage, a join stage, once again similar to how I joined earlier. Here for joining, I'm adding another pipeline, and the pipeline that I want to add is Jan 5th, the supervisory. So exact same thing that I did earlier. The only difference is I want to map sector field with sector underscore VU field. Right? Again, it takes left outer join as the default. I'm selecting everything from here except for those WPA fields.
Means you are selecting one table with two join in one table, two joins with two different tables. One is a sector
Yes.
split and one is with the sector.
Okay, I did a mistake. I by mistake took BDS01. Sorry. Let me cancel this. Instead of BDS01, I took DDS01. Yeah, that's exactly what I'm doing. So I took my primary pipeline as DDS01. So once you have taken any primary pipeline, you cannot go ahead and change it. So that be very careful. The only option is you can always change a secondary pipeline, but a primary pipeline cannot be changed. So this is my second derived data set. The only option for me is to delete it. So here it was relatively simple because there was no subsequent lineage or dependency I had built. But if you have built a significant portion, then it would become difficult, right? You'll have to redo everything. So this is what I actually wanted, BDS01 company details as my primary pipeline. I by mistake selected DDS01.
Company details.
Right?
Okay.
That is the only reason. So again, I'm simply renaming it as DDS02. I am adding a tag and save. Okay, I would click on edit, add a new join stage. I want to join with another pipeline, Jan 5th. And the second pipeline is supervisory organization. Basically what I did with my previous derived data set. The only difference, sector
So the
here,
primary pipeline itself is automatically selected. If wherever you are saying the
right,
join on, whichever the table you are saying
exactly,
join on, it will let you select the
right,
secondary one. Okay.
right. So your primary pipeline, that's why what you select as your primary pipeline is critical, right? So because that's what defines how your join would happen, or your union would happen for that matter.
Is there any logical diagram which will show us that, okay, this is joined to this table, this is joined to this table?
It would show only at the lineage level.
Okay.
Okay, so let's, so if I, so this, if you see, gives me many more records, because here I'm joining at the BU level, wherein most of my mapping is happening. So now I have two derived data sets created. One derived data set is DDS01, which has the top 9 rows. And now I have created a second derived data set wherein I have the remaining rows. So what I need to do is club this together, right? Combine this together. Uh, what what function do we use in SQL to combine two data sets or to combine two tables?
Combine two tables.
Mhm.
Is joining or blending?
Not joining, not joining, blending.
Yeah. Okay.
So what, are you aware? So
Yeah.
union,
It's two
have you
different data
worked?
sets. Yeah.
Okay.
Club
So
this.
now I have, let's revisit. I created three base data sets, and then using base data set 01 and 02, we have created two derived data set. One is DDS01, something we created yesterday, and now I have created DDS02, right? Which has all the remaining records. So what I want to do is now I want to club the data. When I say club the data, the first derived data set has 9 rows. The second one, let's say, has some 100 rows. I want to join both of those rows or add both of those rows, which will ultimately give me 109 rows, right? And how do I do that? I do that using a union function or a union stage. All right. Okay. So what I'll do now is to create a new derived data set, a third one that I'm creating in here. I'm creating a new derived data set, right? I'm creating it using Jan 5th DDS01 as my primary pipeline.
Okay.
Select. So the moment I do that, I'll give it a name. So this is my third derived data set. So I'm calling it DDS03. But then this derived data set has been created using existing derived data set. So it exists at level 2. So this is again a, a, a naming convention which is usually followed, which makes it easy for you to visualize things. So now, for example, you know that there are already two derived data sets. So this is a third one. And then you know that this is at level 2 within the hierarchy, within the lineage, right? But as such, there's no fixed rule. You can select any meaningful name, right?
Okay.
I'm selecting Jan 5th. And now when we look at the lineage, this would make a lot more sense. Okay, if I click on edit, you'll see that this derived data set I have created, it is based on DDS01, something I already have open here. All the 9 rows of data from DDS01 have flown into this DDS03. But I also need to get data from DDS02, the second derived data set I created, right? And I want to join those X rows with these rows. So for that, as I mentioned, I would add a new stage, and the stage I want to add is a union. So join basically allows me to join rows from table A with rows from table, not rows, sorry, columns from table A with columns from table B. A union, on the other hand, allows me to join rows from table A with rows of table B. So the difference is join adds columns, union adds rows. So I want to do a union. Again, I would have to select a secondary pipeline. My primary pipeline is already defined. I want to add another pipeline, and the another pipeline I want to add is DDS02, right? Something we just created. So I am unioning DDS01 with DDS02 in the new derived dataset DDS03. And when I select this, right? So when I'm doing union, it basically checks the columns in table A with columns in table B, because Workday needs to know where a given column would join. So it shows me the primary pipeline and all the columns in the primary pipeline. So if I scroll right, my primary pipeline has company, company Workday ID, sector, parent company, and it also shows me a sample of my secondary pipeline, which is DDS02. And here, based on comparing these two tables or these two data sets or these two pipelines, whatever you want to call them, it says that this is the output, right? And the reason it has identified that is based on these columns. So it sees that there is a perfect match, and then it proposes that to me. It says that the final
No,
output,
does it, Ravi, does it done the union? What basis it done the union? Union pipeline.
once I click on done, it would. So on what basis?
Giving
That's
the
what
data.
I'm telling you. It
Okay,
is based on these values. So the company name here in my primary pipeline
okay,
maps to the company name in my secondary pipeline. So it is doing that union based on the column names, right?
okay,
It is basically comparing the primary pipeline with the secondary pipeline, checking which of the fields are in common, right? So here as well, if you see on the left hand side, it shows me what fields are matched. So it shows me that 11 out of 11 fields in the primary pipeline, they map to the 11 out of 11 fields in the secondary pipeline.
yeah,
And it
okay,
automatically shows that mapping to me. Company name maps to company name, company Workday ID maps to company ID. If your column names are different, then you may have to manually select and map. So had the column name here been company title, just as an example, then Workday wouldn't have been able to identify it, and then you would have had to manually select it. So that is also possible. You can go in here and say, okay, this is what Workday is proposing, but this is not the right mapping. It should map to this one as an example, and you can manually select that. So
okay,
these are the mappings, and this is the final name of my output table. If I want, I can change it. So instead of company name, for example, I can. But basically, Workday is showing me this is the my union output. So now when I say done, because everything is perfectly all right, I accept what Workday has proposed, I'll say done. So now when I say done, here it gives me the output of the union stage. So if I click on import, this is the output of my primary pipeline stage. Now I have done a union. So when I click on any stage, it gives me the data as of that stage. So if I click on union, if you see, the output of the union stage is all of these records, right? So the same thing happens here as well. If I click on import, it shows me the output of my import stage. When I click on join, it shows me 9 rows. So when I click on any stage in a pipeline, in a data set, it shows me the output of that stage. Make sense?
yeah, correct. Yeah, yeah, got it.
Okay. So if I can quickly talk about stages. Just give me a second.
Join as a first join or
Yeah. So we've looked at two of these till now. One is a join and one is a union. Okay, so we'll talk about other stages as well in more detail, but join and union, because you're already aware, I would not spend much time. So join basically adds columns from two different pipelines, right? Which is two different data sets. And union, it basically adds rows from two different pipelines. But irrespective of you join or union, right? If you see, any stage would always impact the number of rows of data, right? So even though when I'm saying a join adds rows, if you see, the end result of join is 9 rows of data. Earlier there were only 7 rows, and after join it has resulted in 9 rows of data. So whenever you add a stage, it may change the number of rows of data, which is the output of that stage. Okay, having discussed that, now we can talk about stages in a bit more detail. So as I mentioned, the output of the final stage is actually the output of the primary of the entire pipeline, right? Similarly, the output of the primary pipeline is the output of the entire data set. So again, what did I discuss? A data set is a collection of pipelines. A pipeline is a collection of stages. If I come to this data set as an example, this data set has two pipelines. One is primary pipeline and additional pipeline. Each pipeline is a collection of stages. So the output of the final stage is the output of that entire pipeline, and the output of the primary pipeline is the output of that entire data set. So if you see, this is my primary pipeline, this is the final stage of this primary pipeline. So this is the final output, and this is the output of this entire derived data set, right? So the output of the primary pipeline is always the output of that entire data set, right? And therefore, and this is something we'll look at in more detail later, when you ultimately publish a data set. What is a publishing of a data set? As I mentioned, we'll talk about later. The output of the primary pipeline will be materialized as the data in the Prism data source and used for doing or creating visualizations or reports. So when you finally publish your entire Prism work, it is the output of the final data set which is converted into your data that would be available for analysis. And the output of the final data set is basically the output of the primary pipeline of that data set. All right. So having discussed that, now if I go to this data set and look at the lineage. So let's see how our lineage has changed. Actions, dataset, view, lineage. So this would make things easy to understand. So if you remember, we started with two base data sets. One was company details, the second was supervisory details. I basically joined both of them. So I took the company details and then joined it to the supervisory details, which gave us our DDS01. Similarly, I took the company details and joined it with supervisory details, which gave us DDS02. And finally, I have created my DDS03, which is basically a union of company details DDS01 and DDS02. But as such, here it doesn't show you what you were asking for, whether this is a join or a union or any other stage. So that is not possible, right? For that, you'll have to look into that data set. It only shows you the interdependency between different data sets. Make sense?
It looks like I miss here somewhere. You said we have these are the data sets, right? The middle ones are the data sets, and these
Everything is
ultimately
a
derived
everything
data.
is a data.
Yeah,
Yeah,
these are the
these are
different.
base data set. Yes. Go
These
ahead.
are
Go
the
ahead.
two based data sets. The first two are,
Mm-hmm,
and
mm-hmm,
after that, two are the data derived data.
mm-hmm. Right.
Last one is data set,
Last one is also derived data set.
derived
Right?
data set.
So
Yeah.
everything is a data set. The only
Mm,
difference is the first two are my BDS, so base data sets.
it's
I
okay.
use these base data set to create two derived data sets. And if you remember, if I
Yeah.
this is one of those, and I
But
created them
one of
using.
them you try to create a outside of the report, right? You try to create a derived data set because
Mhm.
you want to take the data source as a different data source, not in the workday. But ultimately, you
That I
selected
have
only.
not created yet.
Yeah.
That I'll do later.
Okay. Okay.
So
So,
till
but
now, mhm,
uh
that
when
also
you
will build that scenario. Don't worry.
okay.
Okay, that
So
is also
whatever it is, base data set, we can't use it anytime. We have to use a derived data set only.
for all transformations, modifications.
Oh, yeah, all transformation modifications. Okay.
So if I go to this base data set as an example,
Really good.
this is my base data set, and if I click on edit, right? So this is that supervisory org that I'm looking at now. If I click on add stage, you'll see there's no option to add a join stage or a union stage. I can only group by, filter, and manage fields. We'll talk about these stages as well, right? So I cannot
Okay.
do a join, I cannot do a union. All those are only possible on a derived data set. Okay. So on your
Oh,
base data set, you cannot do any of those transformations.
okay. So that's the reason you have to make sure it's a derived data set and then
Exactly. That's why you have to create a derived data set. There's no other option.
really a different terminology. Okay.
But then if you see, it makes things simple as well, because if you do everything at one place, then it becomes confusing, right? So
Yeah.
now anyone who's looking at it, he would be able to actually understand it. Okay, it is joining to these two sources and then joining. So you are basically creating those modules, and this is how your programming also works, right? You create different modules, and in each module you do a single function, so it becomes easy.
Yep. Yep. Yeah. Yeah. Need to get used to of the terminology now. Yeah.
Exactly. So that's why I mentioned go through the recording, because once we keep adding, then it would become confusing for
Yeah.
you. Okay.
Yeah. Just moving the data just like that into other data table.
And the other thing is we are building on a single example, right? So if you don't understand one bit of it, then you would keep missing all the other bits. Every bit is based on, so we'll keep adding to this example. And as part of this, we'll understand all aspects of Prism, right?
Okay.
So you should be going through uh, the first example, and then you would understand all subsequent sessions. Okay,
Okay.
so this is my final data lineage till this point in time. Okay, However, if you remember, I had created 3 base data sets, not 2. Here I have only used 2 of them, right? So if I go back to my data catalog, excuse me, if I go back to my data catalog, if you see, I have created 3 base data sets. One is BDS01 company details, which is what I'm using here. Then I created, BDS02 supervisory details, which is what I'm using here. And then I created a third one, which includes my worker details. Now that is something I've not used till now. So till now I have only used these 2 base data sets. Let's quickly see what is there in this third base data set. We have already seen that this basically includes the worker details. So this data set, or this base data set that we created on our day 1, it includes our individual worker details. So it shows me, for example, this employee Logan McNeil, whose ID is 21001, belongs to this supervisory organization, right? And then it also shows all the other aspects of this employee. Okay, now if I look at my final derived data set that we have been able to create till now. So if I click here, so this includes my company details, and in each of those companies, so for example in Europe, if I see here, these are the different supervisory organizations, right? So in Europe there are a number of supervisory organizations. Now these supervisory organizations that I have here can now be mapped to the workers that I have here, because to each of these supervisory organizations belong my workers. So now I'll do another join, and this time I'll join this final derived data set, which has all of my companies and their included supervisory organizations. And then within that supervisory organizations, I also want to understand how many workers are there. So for that, I would join this DDS03 with my base data set, which has the worker details, right? So I am in this DDS03 now, which is this one. I would click on edit. So now I'm going to make use of the third base data set that I had created. I want to add another stage, and this stage is to join this derived data set with this base data set, which has the worker details. I would copy text, add another pipeline, and the pipeline that I want to add is the BDS03 worker details. Select. And how am I joining them? We have already discussed that I would join based on the supervisory organization my worker belongs to, which is basically this one. So I want to join the supervisory organization name in the primary pipeline with the supervisory organization name in the worker details. And then just for the purpose of fail proof, so every supervisory org, or in fact every object, is associated with a unique ID, which is known as the WID or Workday ID, right? So I can have 2 supervisory organizations or 2 objects with the same name. For example, I can have 2 employees who are known as Logan McNeil, but obviously their employee ID would always be unique, right? So I can have multiple workers with same name, but their ID or their username is unique. So I would add another join condition saying not just name should match, but also their associated ID should match, right? I could have directly done this only on ID, and that should have also been fine. Again, the default join type that is selected is the left outer join. I want to select all the fields of my primary pipeline, and from my secondary pipeline I want to include all the fields except for the supervisory org name and the Workday ID, because this is something which is any which way is coming from the primary pipeline. Sorry, questions?
No, it's just repeating. Yeah,
Yeah, it's just repeating, so I don't have to do that. Now, if you see, once I save this and look at my lineage once again, so if I refresh, right? So now this derived data set, I have also joined with my third base data set, right? So this is how my final structure looks.
But it was
So
doing. It
three,
was showing as a DDS01. Under TDS01 only you have created this join, right? Can you go back to
where,
the 0503? Okay, I was looking at the 05 DDS01 here. Okay.
right?
Oh, below primary pipeline I was seeing here.
Right? So my primary pipeline for this DDS03 is still DDS01, right? Because this DDS03 I created using DDS01 as the primary pipeline. Then I unioned it with DDS02, and then I have joined it with PDS03. So this data set contains three pipelines now.
Mm-hmm.
DDS01 is the primary pipeline, and
Yeah.
then I have joined it, unioned it with DDS03, 02, and now I have joined it with BTS03. So these are
Okay,
all my
if I go
pipelines.
into the pipeline, it won't show us it's a join or it is anything. But if you see the outside layer, it will show me that it's a union or a join. Okay.
Correct. So this is where when you go to a pipeline, within pipeline we are adding stages, right? So a data set contains pipeline, and when you click on that pipeline, that's where you see those stages: join, union, what is happening. Okay.
Yeah, but if you change pipeline, when I click on change pipeline, it won't tell me that is it a union or is it a join or anything. It's just give a
Let's,
name,
it would,
addition.
so it only shows me it's imported and joined, right?
Okay.
But it is grayed out. Obviously, I cannot refer it from here.
Okay.
I click here and then click here, it shows me there was a join.
Okay.
The pipeline has been joined.
Okay.
Okay, but that is something I can always see from my primary pipeline itself.